Welcome to the A&M Podcast with guests, and it's gonna be lit. Today we're gonna be talking about the book Call of the Wild, and I'm gonna start out with the summary. The book starts out with a dog named Buck. He's at his owner's house, and he's playing with his kids, and he gets tired and goes in to eat, and then he comes back out to play with the kids. But when he's out playing with the kids, he sees this wild animal that tries to threaten him, so Buck just goes on a rampage and kills it. And the kids get really scared of Buck since he turned into a wild beast. So the owner gives him away to this guy in a red sweater, and Buck tries to attack him. So the guy in the red sweater just beats Buck and gets some bruises, and then they put him in a cage and they feed him food, but take care of him. But then he got sent up to the north, where he meets Pearl and Francois, who are French Canadians, and they are the ones that own this sled team. And the leader of the dogs is Spitz. He has a little rivalry with Buck, and he adapts to the conditions that he's in. He also gets stronger, smarter. He's just better overall, and he becomes higher up, and eventually he fights Spitz for leader, and he kills Spitz, and then they just move on because he earned his spot as leader. Then Pearl and Francois just eventually stopped traveling, so they sold the team and gave them to Mercedes, Hal, and the brother. And Mercedes is a hoarder. She keeps all of her things, and she won't get rid of anything, and it's harder to push the sled because it's just so much weight on the dogs, and they treat the dogs really bad. They whip them, and they eventually buy a axe, and if the dogs stop working, then they just kill them. And that is how John meets Buck, because they were treating Buck really bad, whipping him, and they were gonna kill him. But John steps in and just takes Buck away from them, but he has to fight Hal and the brother. Then Buck joins John's team with two of the dogs named Nig and Skeet. And Skeet is a doctor dog. She nurtures Buck back to being healthy. And when John goes to a bar, this one guy named Burton tries fighting John because John owes him money. But Buck comes and almost kills Burton by he bites his hand first, and then he almost gets him in the throat and cutting his jugular, but thankfully, Burton blocked his neck, so Buck couldn't bite him there. And then they ran off, and people started throwing clubs at him, but they didn't hit him. So then he just ran off, and they didn't see him again. Then he saves John's life again when they're on a boat, and they're going down a river, and they're in the rapids, and it flips over. And so he just has to tie a rope around Buck, and Buck swims to the shore, and they're safe. But Buck almost dies by drowning. But he eventually got safe and lived on. Then Buck eventually hears the call of the wild, and he follows the wolf, and then the wolf leads him to the pack, and Buck joins the pack since he's one of the stronger ones there. And then he comes back to go see John again, since he's really faithful to John, and John's really faithful to Buck. And he just sees the Yi hats doing this ceremonial thing, and he just sees that they killed John, and Buck just overcomes with rage and goes on a rampage and kills them. And he left, and he stays with the pack, and now they tell stories about Buck as the ghost dog, and he goes back every year where John was killed, since he was that loyal to him.
Okay, this is the setting. Buck lived in a small town. His owner took him for a walk, but they saw him and knocked him out with a bang, and he showed up on a train. The train was normal, but there was no water or food. Buck was so many times after he got of the train. Eventually, an old man bought Buck, and then they start training him well. After they took him to a boat, and there they spent a few months where every day was the same. Then Buck arrived in winter. They took him out of the boat and they took him to another place. After that, everything was in snow and the owner put him on a shell and he learned fast would go from town to town throughout of the whole book. Later, the story was changed to a town because Buck was sold by his last owner and had a new owner. That Buck new owner were training him bad, and they will ship him, and then Joe saved him out brown with his dogs. They will travel around Alaska where they found gold and then joined that.
So our sponsors for today are Laserbeam and Goat Gamer 11. Make sure to subscribe to their channels and drop a like on their new videos.
I am doing the main character. Main character in the Call of the Wild is Buck. Buck grows and changes through trials and challenges to find himself. Buck starts the story as a kind, loving family dog, but through abuse, hunger, and multiple ownerships changes, Buck evolves. Buck is strong both mentally and physically. By the physical strength, he was able to pull 1,000 pounds on a sled, and when he was starved and tired and beaten, he kept with pulling the sled. Buck was also strong mentally. At one point, he was so tired he didn't get up, and when he was hit harder, he didn't move and stuck with his mind. Later on, when his new owner John got hit, Buck stuck for him by attacking John's opponent. Buck will do anything for John. That is one of the mental strong things Buck did. Other characters that are in the book include Spitz, John, Parole, Francois, and Felix. Spitz was the leader of the dog sled team before Buck, and he was strong and aggressive to other dogs, and was Francois' favorite dog on the sled team. Francois did not care what Spitz did. John was another important character. He was Buck's fourth master, and he took Buck off the dog sled team. John was a kind and smart man. He was the most loyal to Buck, and he saved Buck's life by rescuing him from abusive masters. That's why Buck likes John so much. Paul and Francois was Buck's second master. They were sled leaders when Spitz the dog was the leader in the sled team, but they did not care for the dogs. Paul and Francois were very good sled team masters. They knew what they were doing with the sled team. So Leaks in the story was Buck's friend on the sled team. He was very aggressive and was blind in one eye, which made him aggressive. He was also very strong. Only the Buck could defeat him.
So next I'm going to talk about the theme of the story, and it is to never give up. This is the theme because Buck, even though he went through all the dog sled teams, he never gave up and kept on fighting. When Buck was on his last legs, he kept on fighting and got what he wanted. Like when he wanted to lead the dog sled team, but Spitz was the leader. Buck killed Spitz and became the leader. Buck was the only person in the story who never really lost hope and knew that there was always a better place to be. He knew that if he tried his hardest, he would be on a better team and would get treated better. Another theme in the book is trying to find yourself, because in the beginning of the book, he was a domesticated dog, but even Buck got bloodshot eyes that his first owner knew he was wild. Through the story, he was getting more wild as he went through every owner and experience. You could tell that he was getting more like a wolf and less like a dog. But at the end, Buck finally heard the call of the wild and joined a wolf pack. And he was so wild that wolves accepted him. Also, Buck had to learn that if he wanted to get something, he had to fight it to get it. And when he did get what he wanted, that he had to defend it or he would get it taken away. Overall, I think that never give up and keep on fighting and trying to find yourself are the themes of the story, because them are the three things that the Buck did throughout the whole story.
Now I will be talking about an act of heroism from Buck. And an act of heroism is when he was at the bar with John and his helper guys, and John got into a fight with Burton, and he hit John, so Buck goes in and fights him, about kills him. Then he gets clubs thrown at him, but he doesn't get hurt. Another act of heroism is when he's ambushed by a pack of wolves, and Buck kills a couple of them, but they have to end up running away because the wolves almost killed them, and the wolves stole their food. Then another one is when John and Buck were on a boat, and the boat flipped, and they tied a rope around Buck so they could swim to shore, and he saved John's life by Buck almost gave up his life for John. Then there is a example of overcoming the odds when Buck is pulling a sled that is 1,000 pounds for money, and everybody's doubting Buck, saying that he can't do it and that he will fail, but he ends up showing him up and pulls it, and John won the money, and now he is able to repay people that he had to pay. Another thing that shows overcoming the odds is when he was with Mercedes, Hal, and the brother. He was starving, he was getting beat, but he still wouldn't give up. He still kept on going, but then he had to eventually give up because he was so tired and hungry.
Make sure that you subscribe to our sponsor, Adam Blazek, Mr. Blazek's YouTube channel, and make sure to like and subscribe on our videos in our previous video, the A&M Podcast.